Hi guys, this is Rocky Gor, founder of CAPX. I have Scott Glassberg with me. Scott's been helping us on the CAPX platform. So Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Thanks, Rocky. Yeah, so I've over 30 years in corporate banking, working on sourcing, structuring corporate middle market loans from most, if not all, of my career, and have spent many hours shepherding literally hundreds of loans through the loan approval process. So um, that's kind of my background.
So that's perfect setting for this. So what I wanted to talk about, Scott, is typically when a CFO or a private equity partner or somebody at a firm is trying to get a loan, they're typically interacting with one person, a coverage banker, a relationship banker, and they are totally relying on what this banker tells them about the institution's ability to do the deal, how much money they can get, how quickly they can process. But as people like you and I have been behind the scenes, we have seen the process and we know that there are so many layers to this that most borrowers don't understand or grasp. As you have done this so many times, as you said in your introduction, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of go through this step by step as to what happens to a deal once the originator or the front end banker gets the deal from the potential borrower. What happens in the institution, the steps it goes through, how many hands it touches that deal and that can kill the deal, and what is the end outcome. So if you don't mind, why don't you just kind of walk us through what happens from the deal's arrival?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So probably the first step would be the banker receives some information or a phone call from a company about a transaction. The first thing he'll do is he'll go back to his office and maybe sit down with his immediate boss, the team lead. Oftentimes they'll bring in the head of underwriting and they'll just have a discussion about the deal, whether it's a fit or not. If it's a real kind of straightforward, easy deal, they may just have the authority to issue a high-level term sheet at that point. More likely than not, though, it's going to require an internal discussion of more depth between a number of other individuals within the bank.
So let's pause at that. So we started with just one guy, the banker or gal, and he or she was going to opine on the deal. And now the deal goes in, and right away it becomes three people. So there are now three individuals who can have an opinion on the deal and kind of decide the outcome. But keep going because this number keeps changing. What is the next step?
Yeah, so in order to have that discussion, there needs to be some sort of a screening memo created. So the banker will assemble a team of himself and a couple associates to put this memo together. And that process could take 2 days. It could take a week. Just depends on their internal resources and the complexity of the deal.
So to keep the count, we had one person, then we went to three people, and now we're adding one or two associates. So 4 to 5 people now who are touching the
Yes,
deal. And
yes.
then it goes on. So the
Yes.
next step.
The stone is starting to roll down the hill, as we say.
Exactly.
Um, so from there, the screening discussion happens, and that's where the banker and his team assembles kind of some of the senior level folks within the bank to kind of highlight the transaction and get the green light to issue a term sheet. So within that meeting can be any number of people. It can be usually it's the head of the business unit that's involved. It's the head of underwriting. It's one of the credit folks on the risk side. It could be an industry banker. It could be a capital markets banker if it's a sizable transaction that involves more than one lending institution. So you could have half dozen people. What they do is sit down and talk about the deal, go through the memo, ask questions, and ultimately the objective is to come out with some sort of an approved deal, and a term sheet would be issued at that point, term sheet or a formal proposal letter.
So the previous step, we had like 4 to 5 people who had touched the deal. And now you go to the screening committee and we had half a dozen or a little bit more people there. So suddenly now we are at 10 to 12 people who have touched the deal before a document is produced that provides you reliable guidance on what the deal could be. But obviously, the underwriting is still not done, but you are still at a point where you have a proposal letter and already 10 to 12 people have touched the deal and it has gone through several steps. But more to come. So what's next?
Yeah, no, that's accurate. That's not unusual for a term sheet proposal letter to get issued. So then let's say it is issued, there's some given back and forth between the banker and the company to settle on the terms. And once they're accepted, then starts the underwriting process. So some more individuals get involved. You heard me mention that the head of underwriter, once the deal is sort of accepted by the borrower, he will put a team together of 2 to 3 professionals that are in the underwriting group that kind of spend more time doing a much deeper dive into the specifics of the company and the transaction, and they'll work, with the company's help to produce a detailed document, a credit memo, credit committee memo, whatever you want to call it. And that's something that takes another weeks more than days because it's a lot more complicated.
Sure. So at this stage now, we added 2, 3 more people to the process. We already had like 10 to 12. Now we're adding 2 to 3 more. So by the time the deal is ready to go for the final approval at the committee, basically there are 15 people, 12 to 15 people who have touched the deal and who could have an opinion on the deal that could decide the outcome of the deal, of the terms, the direction it takes, the time it takes, etc. So we are at the committee, we present the deal. Tell us a little bit about what happens at the committee and kind of how it goes.
Yeah, so usually the senior underwriter along with your banker will present the memo, which has been looked at ahead of time, but then there's a lot of discussion that goes on, and you're generally in front of another set of senior managers, largely the group that may have looked at it in the initial screening phase, but there's often 1 or 2 more senior folks that don't get involved till later in the process who are seeing the deal possibly for the first time. So there's a discussion to go through all the diligence findings and questions back and forth, and ultimately you get to either the deal is approved as is, or sometimes there's some changes that are required because of diligence findings, and on some occasions the deal may even be declined. Not often, but that's part and parcel of the committee process, I would say.
Yeah, so potentially a couple people more here in this stage. So now we're at a pretty meaningful number, anywhere between 15, 17 people who might have touched the deal at some point and might have an opinion. But let's say we get the approval, we are getting closer to the end. So what happens next?
So the approval is communicated back to the company, and presuming everyone's okay with the final deal as it stands, you move into the loan documentation phase. So generally, the bankers will bring in the outside counsel to help with that process, and they'll work with the company and negotiate a loan document. Occasionally, that's the banker doing that as well, or it could be just the underwriting team. It varies, but usually that goes pretty smooth. But there are occasions where things get surfaced in the loan documentation process that also need to go back to committee and get approved if they're significant or not. So that, I guess, creates another step in the process.
And plus, you're the lawyers that you're working with, although they do not drive the deal, but they raise issues, they touch the deal.
Yes.
They have a point of view on certain aspects of the structure, the credit itself at times. So while they don't kill the deal, but they can move the deal in certain directions. So there are a couple of additional people touching the deal here again.
Yes, that happens, and if once you get through all that, then hopefully you have a deal that's finalized and fully approved by the internal folks within the bank, and then you're in a position to close the loan and fund the loan after that.
So once the documents are done, or within while the time that you are doing the documentation, something comes up, then I guess you go back to the committee and inform them again. So there could be a little loop if there was some meaningful change in the process or in the documentation. Once
Yes.
all that is done, in the end, you're ready to fund and close. And if I was counting this right, I think we went through like 7 different steps before the deal got done, from the point that a CFO or a private equity professional said, we want capital. And probably anywhere between 15 to 18 people ended up touching the deal. So it just seems that if I'm just relying on what the originator is telling me or the banker is telling me, while they might be quite experienced about their process and the products, um, they do not necessarily have a ton of control unless the deal is very, very straightforward in the process, isn't that? I mean, there are a lot of people who have an opinion and that can move the direction of the deal. So there's overall quite a bit of uncertainty in the process.
Yeah, I'd say that's very true. I mean, sometimes I think companies get lulled into, they have a relationship with a banker and it's lasted years, and they think just, go talk to him and the deal will get done. As we've talked through it, you can see there's many people involved with opinions, and there's many sort of things that can happen. And so, my takeaway, being doing this for a long time, is, it's important to understand that there's a process and there's a lot of people involved, and things can happen that unexpected. So, you know, having options and having an ability to not necessarily rely on one banker and one process is probably a smart thing to do if you're in need of capital and in the middle of a process that's got time and other pressures.
No, you're absolutely right. So basically, thinking through the options of, is this the only loan structure I can do, or can I explore some others? So I have different type of credit risk, and then along with that, I have different types of lenders that I'm dealing with. So I would think that that's kind of the first step of diversification. At the same time, you also, I think, want to think about, okay, if I'm pursuing this particular structure, should I just rely on this one banker that I've known for such a long time? Or, considering this complexity and variability in the process, I should reach out to multiple parties. And I think a borrower should do both of them. And I think that's kind of where we come in at CAPX, that it is not that easy for most borrowers to kind of come up with multiple structures and go to multiple lenders. But then on CAPX, that's exactly what we allow them to do, that they can really quickly come up with multiple structures and quickly find out, which are the lenders that they can go to and approach them simultaneously, so that as these processes are running in multiple institutions, the ones that you're relying on, they do not produce the result that you're looking for. You always have a backup and kind of path to follow to close the deal.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the takeaway for folks that are considering doing a major capital event. They have to protect themselves and have options, and I think that's what CAPX really brings to the table.
Great. Well, thanks for the insight, Scott. We'll talk about something else next time.
Okay. Thanks, Rocky.